I'm a glass half full person, so I think there's enough positives that I see out there.
So you don't think we are heading towards recession?
Well, I think it could, but if we do, we'll dip in and dip out. So it's 2 negative quarters. So if we go through 2 slight negative quarters, that's possible.
Welcome, David.
Thank you, Jazz. Lovely to be here. Thank you for the invitation. So it's just great to sit down with you and all things, not just real estate, but maybe just talk about general things, how things are playing out in the landscape from an economy point of view as well. So happy to answer any questions you've got.
Amazing. Thank you so much for coming.
Sure. Appreciate it.
Let's get into it straight. What do you think of the market right now?
Yeah,
it's a buzz.
Yeah, the buzz, as they always talk about. Well, I think the market is still very, very solid. I talk to a lot of people, and there's some perception dealing with that the market may be softening and going through that approach. But what I'm seeing at the moment is that there still remains a shortage of stock. So as everyone understands in simple economics and supply and demand, we're still seeing very good numbers through open houses. For us, it's always looking at the KPIs. The barometer for us is always how many people are coming through open houses. So we're certainly seeing some strong numbers through open houses. And for example, on the weekend we had 5 auctions and they all sold, so 100% clearance rate. And a shortage of stock. As we move into spring, I think all agents are fighting for stock to take to the market throughout the spring period. So I really believe spring's going to be a strong selling season. And I think that leads into why is there good sustained demand that's out there at the moment. I think you only have to look to, our immigration's very strong still. So there's always that clean demand that comes through. But it's a lot of domestic demand as well. So the simple answer to how the market is at the moment, I think there's good opportunities on both sides of the fence, whether you're a seller or buyer. You really want to list well in August to set up a great spring.
Amazing. What do you think about the pricing right now as opposed to interest rates as well? So if you keep that in mind.
I think the biggest watch in the economy, talking more broadly, and what's influencing interest rates at the moment is inflation. I think that's what the Reserve Bank are looking at the moment. I'm hoping that they don't pull the trigger on any increase soon. I think obviously they looked at the last quarter and we saw a spike from 3.6 to 3.8. So I'm hoping that they will wait to see the September quarter numbers come through. Well, this is only my personal opinion. I think it's been driven by increases in energy costs. As the world strives to cleaner energy, it comes at a sacrifice. And what's that sacrifice? Well, obviously moving away from coal and gas and to renewable energies, that's the cost. And it's not just from a domestic point of view, it's also commercial. Just got back from Europe and looking the costing's crazy over in Europe. It's worse than Australia. So I can see it's a total global effect across the board, both domestically and business and industrial, commercial and sectors. And obviously they've got to pass on those costs as well. So that's really where I see the inflationary pressures coming from. Historically speaking, inflation at 3.6 or 3.8%, doing real estate for 37 years now. So I've been through it. I started in the year of 87, and that's when they had the stock market crash in October 87. That led to a real estate boom, because everyone took their money out of the shares and put it into bricks and mortar, which I still believe is the safest form of investment. And then we went through our recession we had to have, according to Paul Keating back in the early 90s. So I know what it looks like. I don't think we're anywhere near that.
So you don't think we are heading towards recession?
Well, I think it could, but if we do, we'll dip in and dip out. So it's 2 negative quarters. So if we go through 2 slight negative quarters, that's possible. I think we're very resilient here in Australia. And I suppose after 28 years of continued growth, you think, well, it's got to happen eventually. But I'm a glass half full person, so I think there's enough positives that I see out there. Many years I've always listened, doomsdayers, this is going to happen, that's going to happen, watch out. It's almost like you're a 3-year-old again, and they're like, be careful, watch out. Be prudent. I think there comes a time where you have to be mindful and cautious, and there is a time for that. And I think buyers in that sense are apprehensive to where the market might be going. I believe the Reserve Bank is conscious that we're on a bit of an edge at the moment, in a sense where they know that 1 or 2 more increases in interest rates could have a hard effect on the marketplace and then the ripple effect that can cause. So that's why I don't believe they'll have any knee-jerk reaction at the moment. 3.6 to 3.8 for a quarter. Okay, it went up 0.2. Common sense will prevail, I'd imagine, and they just wait to see what happens over the next few months. On the weekend, on a Sunday, you can easily look up the statistics to what the REIV statistics are for clearance rates. And generally, it's been a long time since they've dipped under 70%. Anytime they're over 70%, it's a good market.
It says it all, anyway.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. And above 65, you're trending towards a good market. Below 65% clearance rate, you're trending towards a softening market. So we're well from that at the moment.
Correct. You said it very nicely that, we are very strong in Australia. I believe that 100%. We went to Europe 2 years ago and I felt the same. It was around the time that, the Prime Minister had resigned and there were all, protests happening, whatnot. So I did realize that cost of living is super high over there. And I was like, why do we even care to complain in Australia? My goodness.
I know. We're isolated. I think that works both ways, but it's good. That gives us a protective market. Immigration's always been a strength of Australia. We immigrate extremely well, good skill sets, and we have so much wealth here in many ways. I love to follow not just real estate, but what's happening globally. Now, there's tensions worldwide at the moment, Middle East issues, Ukraine, you got the election with the US, and that always such a big force on a global front. So, how that plays out in November. So that's a big watch. And I think in all marketplaces, what's the consequences, whether we see, Trump back in or whether we see the status quo or Kamala Harris and how that impacts. There's no doubt there's a correlation between stock markets and real estate markets and investment and so forth. So the last week, have you noticed? Yeah.
Extreme high.
I couldn't believe it got to over 40,000. And I know they're saying it's all driven by concerns over world recession, because we're more global than we ever have been. And that's why inflation's a global thing at the moment also. I think we know that share markets can be spooked. But that's what's going to be fascinating to watch over the remainder of this year, to see how things play out. And I think that's what most people are a little bit mindful of. You know what, one of the blessings is real estate. I get to sit down in lounge rooms with people. Yeah, I love to hear people's views and thoughts and opinions. It's fascinating. And if we make a rapid move to clean energy, rapid increase in energy cost, and that's going to play out to me like it is at the moment, which is inflationary pressures. And then that's higher interest rates, and then it's just that cycle. So if we can get that inflation back to that 2.5% to 3% range, I think which we can do, and that's just going to come down to, as I said, the energy costs and whether we can curtail those expenses.
I'm pretty sure there is more fear-mongering than what it actually is. We don't need to worry about anything in Australia. Yes, we all follow US politics, and there is a lot to do with geopolitics of the world right now as well. Too much happening, this, that, and...
True.
But in Australia, there's so much land. We are full of resources.
It's incredible. It's the one thing you always notice growing up in Australia, which is, when you drove through the suburbs. I mean, it's all about the infrastructure. It's like the ring roads we're doing now.
Yeah.
If you look at the plan over the next 50 years, it's about the next ring road that then comes through and so forth. So, that's sort of rattled the cage a little bit over the last couple of years with the cost of building, but it's also the concern some people had where you had a couple of builders that went under, and then that promoted a bit of uncertainty.
But don't you think that was a repercussion of COVID? As a generation, we've never been through a thing like this. We live in a global world. World is a smaller place now. And then the pandemic happened.
Yes.
And then, obviously the governments printed the money, injected the money into the economy. And I think we are still in that repercussion of that.
Yeah.
But what do you think of like Melbourne real estate? Because if you go and read news about real estate in Australia, it appears that Victoria is hard hit. Is that so?
Not at all. I think, as I said, I take your point. I think it has merit with what you said. Look, it was just the cost of materials. The cost went up so much, so I understood why that happened, because post-COVID, we did go through a boom. It was such a big boom that I've done it for 37 years. I've never seen a market like that.
It was not sustainable, was it?
It was not sustainable. The spring of 21 was out of control. In Melbourne, we came out of the August-September lockdown, and then there was plenty of money around because people were locked up and not spending money. It just came out of the blocks. It was all like the Olympics. Every auction had about 10 bidders, and prices were going well above reserve prices. And I think the builders were impacted more by material costs. So if the average cost to build a house, and they had contracts for $600,000 to build houses, and they realised that, well, to build a house, it's going to cost me $800,000. They thought, well, if we build these 50 houses, we're going to build them at a huge loss. Obviously, that's what happened with a lot of those builders. But to answer your question about where we are right now, we're in a good place. There is a sense of negativity out there, but it's almost like the media sometimes. You've got to sift through it to actually see what's real and what's not. It's a bit of smoke and mirrors, and I think that there's always, like if you're doing podcasts and so forth. So what they're trying to do with some podcasts anyway, they try to sensationalise, because
not this one.
No, not this one, because this is about what's being real, and
Yes.
that's what anyone that's watching can pick up what's genuine and what's not. And if not sure, I mean, there's plenty of research out there you can do. But I think some people that go down that path of podcasting are looking for viewers, so their KPIs are to hit as many eyes as possible. The biggest concern for agents in August 2024 is not trying to find buyers, it's trying to find sellers. And anytime,
Wow.
well, that's what we want. We need more people that want to
There
sell.
you go.
Yeah, so,
The podcast finished.
Yeah,
I'm
well,
joking.
no,
So you've
yeah,
said it.
well,
Amazing.
but that's it. So in the balance of supply and demand right now, right, it's clearly there's more demand than supply.
That's exactly why I wanted to have this conversation with you. We do know a lot of agents, Raj, being a developer, but because realistically, when I look at it, I mean, numbers, whatever they're sharing out there is good, okay. But if you look at Australia, there's so much land. You look at Victoria, there's so much land. Yes, cost of building has gone up, but that will go up with decades anyway.
Yes.
And everybody takes time to adjust to it. That's what I feel about it. My kids, if both of them, when they grow up, they would be like, okay, you know, this used to be the cost of building then, this is the cost of building now. So anyway, the commodities do go up. And because the world is shifting rapidly, the change is rapid. So we do feel sometimes we are in a roller coaster.
Great Britain, the US, Canada, Australia, and regardless of which ideology you are, but they're all left-wing and they're more prone to the ideology of cleaner energy and moving quicker towards that.
Yep.
You know, so what does that mean? I mean, there's the question mark. How hard is that going to be driven? And I just think they need to take the foot off the pedal a bit on that. Well, that's the issue that I'm going to be watching because I think that's having a lot of influence on global inflation prices. Funny thing, I've just been blessed with what I do. And it is a privilege. You know, people welcome into your home like you did with me. Come and sit down and we have that chat from one family to the next. You know, whichever culture I go into, it's the same. You can see the love for family. I think that's what, again, makes Australia such an amazing country. We're blessed. When you go into the city, it's like there's 20 different choices of what cuisine you want to have.
Spoiled.
We're
Totally spoiled.
And you know what? Coming back from Europe, and I've done a lot of Southeast Asia, we make it better than what they do.
That's it.
Isn't it?
I felt the same.
Do you feel the same? You come back.
I felt the same 2 years ago. Exactly.
And again, I think the shift is, look, the one thing I'll talk about and I'll just touch upon is I met with Colin Brooks, right? So he's our local minister. And I booked it in before I went over to Europe. Had a good chat. You know, he's lives locally, 3 kids, similar age to me. So I was just open with him because obviously what's happening at the moment is they're bringing in these law changes when it comes to landlords. The issue's been about the increase in expenses. So the holding cost for an investment property is significantly increased. So land tax has gone up. Plus, you've got all the new compliance laws. So compliance laws means it's on average an extra $350 a year. But it's not just that. It's the cost to bring it into compliance because some of the properties that were built back in the 80s, which is prominent around Bundoora, aren't necessarily compliant today. Some of the landlords are having to spend thousands of dollars to get it back to what is compliant today. And new legislation that's been earmarked to come out next year is to talk about bringing everything to star rating.
Energy-wise?
Yeah, well, energy-wise, air conditioning for all properties, insulation for all properties. So that's on the horizon for October 25 and it's been earmarked. The part of the conversation I had with Colin was to say that it's too much too quick for landlords. You know, the land tax has gone up significantly. They've also had to endure the increase in interest rates that we had last year, in some cases thousands of dollars to bring their property to compliance. And now we're earmarked for further compliance next year. I've just had so many landlords, and that's just, again, across the board. Basically, the concern I had is that a lot of landlords are saying they've had enough, you know, so they're selling. So we've sold a lot of investment properties this year. What I'm seeing is, though, and as I said to Colin, I said, yeah, but you are hurting a lot of people you're supposed to be representing because good people, good families, tenants that have been renting the property for many years are going out into the marketplace and trying to find another property, but the rents have gone up. We've seen a significant drop in the supply of rental properties because a lot of landlords have sold. So there's the pool of rental properties has shrunk. When it comes to real estate, we've got a very strong rent roll where we are. And the people that are selling, some of them are investing in different states. So I want to see the return to the investor. It's been disincentivised to have an investment property because of, as I said, the land tax and the new compliance.
It almost feels you're being punished.
Yes. As I said to Colin, and this is true, I just said the stereotypes, you know, mums and dads pay off their house in their mid-40s. They then think buy an investment property. That's going to set them up in their retirement phase. We don't want everyone to be dependent upon the pension, so that's going to drain, you know, the resources that Australia has. We don't want as many people to go on the pension for obvious reasons, and they look to set themselves up. So I feel for them because that was going to be be their setup. And if other states are offering greater incentives, whether it be, Queensland, WA, South Australia, so forth, then you don't want to see money leave Victoria. You said, I've got a seat at the table and I'll take that perspective across. And I think they've just got to find, you used the word earlier about balance. They've just got to find a better balance, in my opinion.
That's how I feel. It's more of like a political and especially statewide issue right now with Victoria. Is you cannot punish the people to have investment properties, because where should they keep their cash? They put in bank, there's inflation, the money, the value is decreasing. They don't want to do that. They don't want to put in stocks because, stock market is, number one, it's not everybody's thing. Not everyone understands it. Number two, it's very volatile. You just don't know what's happening when. Very US driven. I mean, it is it's
speculative.
So whatever happens there, it just spreads across the whole of the world.
Yeah.
It does to other sectors as well, but most stock market is the first thing that gets hit. So where should you keep your savings in, or where should you keep your money into if you can't put it into real estate?
Most financial planners and investors always say diversify, which is true. I mean, I think it's smart not to put all your eggs into one basket. So the pillars of our society generally, you want to see is really comes back down to hospitals, police. You want to feel safe in your own home, youth crime, drugs and so forth, and having all that under control, but they need resources and support too. And then hospitals and education. I said so much money is just being spilled on roads. It's great to have great roads, bridges and infrastructure, but
shouldn't be the priority.
Yeah, I know. Financially, has invested so much into this infrastructure, but at what cost? And I think they're concerned about how they're going to repay. And I think what they're doing is raising revenue to service that debt. But they're hitting Middle Australia, or Middle Victoria is being hit extremely hard at the moment, because they're the ones that have been asked to pay and foot the bill for all this cost of infrastructure that they've done, and it's just gone way over budget. Well, it's a sight to be seen. Anyone throughout Metro Melbourne, if you haven't been out to see the works, it's incredible, the machinery, and you can see why it's costing so much money. Absolutely. And it's probably still another 2 to 3 years to go before that'll be completed. So that's why there's been so many increases in costs, because I think that they look, well, these people have investment properties, they've got money, we'll increase the taxes. Again, that's traditional of their ideology, where, spend and tax. And I think then we go through that process, then that lasts a certain period of time. And then when we find the new government will get in, it'll be, all right, we've got to balance the books. I became an owner-director in 1997, so it's been 27 years, and it's been an amazing journey. 2 minor ripples. I think, we came off a strong 9 and 10. 11 and 12 dipped a bit. Well, the biggest dip was the recession, but I didn't own my business. I worked in real estate for a company. That was a deep recession for 5 years.
That was in
91 to 96. Yeah, anyone that's under 40 or 45 would not be familiar with what a hard recession looks like, and we're nowhere near that. I worked in Mill Park at the time for my brother, and we had 5 pages of inventory stock. You'd be lucky to get 2 inquiries. This is pre-internet, so pre-mobile phones, Jazz, right? So if your mind can get around that.
Yeah.
So that was back in the day where people would come and look at the shop window, walk in and have the inquiry. But even if it did come to a mild recession, which I still think it won't, we're very resilient, very strong. And I think there's always going to be the demand to live in Australia. Very hard to get here.
Absolutely.
To get citizenship and live in this amazing country.
I do a lot of personal development in terms of, I listen to audiobooks, I read books, and I do listen to a lot of podcasts as well. And I do believe that, just sitting there and complaining and looking at the negatives, every generation could do that. But no matter where the world was at that point, we had billionaires, we had millionaires coming out of those generations as well. So just find an opportunity and work towards it. Work on yourself, see what else you can do.
Yes.
If not property, okay, right now in Victoria, we are hard hit with taxes. Look for something else,
There's still opportunity.
Absolutely. Everywhere. I mean, population is growing.
Yes.
There is always demand.
Yeah, of course
How
there is.
can there not be opportunities?
Look, I'm very mindful and can work my way around when it comes to IT, but I'm not an expert in that field. And there's a lot of people that have been entrepreneurial and made a lot of money through the revolution of IT. For me, yes, it's positive. Yeah, there's always going to be issues here and there. It's never going to be perfect. I think like anything, it's those that take the risk, an educated risk. But I don't believe there's any risk in the real estate market at the moment. I think it's trending quite well.
It's more solid. It's more solid. It's tangible.
It's tangible. Yeah, that's the word I was thinking of. It's tangible. It's there. It's an asset. You can touch it.
It's old school.
It's old school, but there's always going to be that need.
Yes.
I think there's great, not just domestically in Melbourne, but there's great investment opportunities, and that's how you can diversify. So I do have clients I deal with who have investment properties in, several other states as well. It's going to be interesting to see what happens in Queensland. Brisbane Olympics coming up in 32. There's a lot of infrastructure going on up there.
Yeah.
I think Melbourne's very solid, very strong, and that's because I just think, unlike Sydney spread out across the coastline, beautiful beaches, but Melbourne's very, I love this.
It's growing like anything. It's actually one of the fastest growing cities in the world.
Yes.
Analogy, if I can use, is if you're going in a car and if you're going at a good speed,
Yep.
even if you hit a little bump,
Yep.
it feels like
Yep.
you feel it. That's what I think is happening right now.
It's crazy. I mean,
Yeah, look at it. I mean, everywhere,
Mm.
every year you step out and you feel, oh my goodness.
I walked through the city of Melbourne on Sunday, and it was a nice day, grant you. And we're getting some nice weather now after a
Thank goodness.
pretty cold winter. I think the city offers so much in terms of lifestyle. You know what the thing is? When you live in your own city, I don't think you look in your own backyard enough. There's such unique charm.
Beautiful.
Isn't it?
Beautiful cafes. I loved it. Totally loved it. We never explored Fitzroy Side and all those cafes. And we did it last year.
Did you do it last year?
It was amazing. Do it.
I've got to do it. I'll put that on the to-do list for summer.
Do you want to share something to people who are in real estate right now? They haven't seen all of what you have seen. So something from your experience, like valuable.
The one thing I was always, I shouldn't say this, but I will. Look, some wise people have told me two things. Buy more of it and hang on to it. So that's good advice. So when you reflect on that, and I talk to a lot of people throughout the whole, I've been blessed to have 37 years so far in the industry, but I think that's always the double thing, isn't it? You're sort of like, when you buy, you're like, oh, I might have paid too much. And when you sell, you're like, oh, I wish we had a bit more. I think that's not unusual. That's not unusual. You laugh, right? The thing I would say is try to buy as blue chip as you can. Don't worry too much about paying too much. Real estate will always go up. There might be the odd dip now and again, but any dip like 11 and 12 is very short-lived. And when you do build a portfolio, try to hang on to it.
Yeah, I laugh because, we've been through it just recently, when we were selling, we were like, you know how it was, right?
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. What is worth, and try not to sell, keep it, hang on to it. If you really have to, 10, 20, 30, really, it's not a big...
Well, it's a discovery process for everyone. So they'll have the agent out. You broadly talk about where value is, right? Generally speaking, you're on the same page. If there is a variation of expectation, it might be that the vendor's looking for a bit more than what the agent's saying. So that's not uncommon, right? So normally,
everybody wants...
Well, the agent might have an opinion to say something's worth, 1.5 and the vendor's hoping to get 1.6, or a bit better. So that's not uncommon. That's normal. The job of the agent is to really work together in collaboration with the seller to best present the home for sale, and the agent's there to offer that broad advice on how to achieve that, then capture it in marketing, launch online, and then you just got to select a process you want to sell, whether it's an auction or a tender process, price it accordingly. Don't make the mistake of overpricing it, because obviously that can kill the inquiry and the campaign. And in this current market, if it's a good home, you should have a good result. The longer I do real estate, the more, to me, it's pretty ABC. I love helping people through that transition. So I suppose that's what served me well over my time, and something that I love and I'm still passionate about.
And that's a tip.
Yeah. Okay.
Valuable tip. So what you've just shared in regards to, sitting with the seller and everything, I think that's very valuable. So anyone who is an aspiring real estate person or who is just stepped into it, I think that's a good, valuable advice to them, that how to match, the seller's expectations to how to put the property out there. Amazing.
The buyers that come through the open houses see that as well. They feed off the energy at the open houses. And the numbers that are coming through are quite strong. Our first open houses are achieving 15 to 20 groups through. Yeah, it's still a very positive, strong market. Yeah.
Amazing. Thanks
for having me.
so much for your time, David.
No worries.
Amazing.
Thank you,
Appreciate it.
Been a pleasure. Thank you.